Ole Miss gets favorable draws on their team.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're going to bring in Michael Katz to talk about the TV schedule. Ole Miss got a favorable draw from the TV partners this year. Maybe all of the complaining a year ago paid off. And Chris Beard announced that his roster is finalized and kind of did a press conference about that. I think it is time for us to bring in Michael Katz. Michael, with this TV thing, I know the media, we all like the 11 o'clock kickoffs. Everybody likes to be done with work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That is human nature. But after last year, Ole Miss getting some at least flex games to where the earliest it can be is 2:30. That's probably a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, in a perfect world for me, it's all the 11 a.m. games. But if you look at the schedule, I've got it up here right now. I think for Ole Miss, maybe I don't know if this is a favorable thing, but it's something interesting. If you look at the road schedule, all your games are pretty early, other than potentially the Georgia game, which could be, I guess, that the 2:30 to 3:30 or the 5 to 7. Obviously, nighttime in Georgia's going to be hard regardless on the road. So it probably doesn't really matter what time that game is. But you don't have any situations where you're potentially avoiding situations like, going into Death Valley last year for that night game. You don't have those sorts of situations. I mean, again, you've got the potential for some good night games. LSU at home, maybe in that 5 to 7 range. The Arkansas game is going to be nice in 6 to 6:45. I don't know if there's ever a good time to play Kentucky, given the way that they just kind of slop up games, but I think a day game there might not be the worst thing on earth either.
The best thing that we've seen from the schedule, honestly, is 11 o'clock at Oklahoma. That is the money kickoff and probably the best thing after the Georgia game that you can hope for.
Yeah, no, that's, of course, you never know what's going to happen in the course of the season, but I think we all expect Oklahoma to be much improved this year. It looks like they've got the quarterback, the Washington State kid, and obviously their offensive coordinator. I think if that was a night, we've all watched Oklahoma games, night games there. Some weird shenanigans can happen in Norman. So again, that game being on the earlier side is probably for the best to take potentially some of the atmosphere out of it.
The Egg Bowl, listen, I knew the Egg Bowl was going to move to Friday and be one of those games on Friday when I saw that there was no game the week before for either team. I knew that they were going to move that, but 11 o'clock, that game kind of, it's going to be cold, but that kind of feels about right. But Mississippi State has an open press box, right?
They do. I have learned. I always forget about it too. But every time I've been there, it's been like the coldest night in the history of Mississippi. Every time I'm in there, so usually wear a couple layers. So maybe the day game will help that out a little bit.
Yeah, and I do feel bad because, well, you don't get them while Mississippi State is good, because I've talked to Ole Miss players over the past after a road game at Mississippi State because of the cowbells. You hear that sound for like 4 days after the game. Playing Mississippi State at Mississippi State when they're good can cause tinnitus for about a week.
Yeah, I mean, even they obviously haven't been at their best last year at least. It was still pretty. Your last couple years, it's still, you still hear them, man. I had it for a couple hours. I drove home like right after one of the games, and that was just in my ears the entire 2.5 hours.
Yeah, absolutely brutal. So Ole Miss has a favorable draw. Is if you want later games, if you don't want 11 o'clock kickoffs, you're in good shape, because the only early kickoffs will be Washington State, the Citadel, and a road game at Oklahoma, to my knowledge. And I think there might be one of the early games hit that as well. I think Georgia State or seems like one of the early games hit the early time slot.
Let's see. Everything is I mean, the Georgia State game 6:45, Kentucky's 2:30.
Arkansas is a night game as well. I was wrong on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it's pretty good if you're a fan. Yeah, the Washington State game is 11:45.
Yeah. And that will be in a rough spot if we're going to be honest about it, because if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, isn't that after Georgia, Oklahoma, and South Carolina?
It is. So it's after LSU and before
Okay.
Georgia.
Okay. So Ole Miss gets a break on that game, but the Citadel game has a chance to be a sloppy mess.
Yes.
After that 3-game set. Yeah. I'm not looking too fond of that. And just so you know, this is the last time you will see this set behind me. This is the next to the last show that I'm going to record with a green screen. We're going to have all.
What are the new digs? What's the setup?
It's going to be about a 20 by 20 set, all practical. The brick in the background on this set is all green screen. It's going to be practical. It's going to look similar, but we got some more LED stuff, some scroll stuff. It's going to light up. I think we're going to go with a little bit less is more on the top of the shelving unit behind me, but you'll be able to see more of the shelves. So those are going to be just an absolute busy mess. It should be fantastic.
Dang, I'm honored I got to be on here one last time with the old.
Yeah, seriously. It was an opportunity for everybody to say goodbye. You know, that's kind of what's going on there. So when we come back, we will hit Michael up and talk about the Ole Miss basketball team and the roster getting announced and all of that, and talk about Ole Miss sports in general. So be sure to stick around. All right, I do want to tell you about Monarch Money. Monarch Money, you know, it's a very, very, very special thing that you can sit with. And it's not just a way to check your bank balance and all of this. It is a full level, complete financial command center. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, it probably went on dining out, online shopping, and entertainment. You know, it's kind of easy to lose track. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Like I said, you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing money and start building actually wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even see where you are on your long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for half off of your first year. All right, let's get back in it with Michael Katz and talk about Chris Beard and the Ole Miss basketball team. Chris Beard had a press conference over the last week. The roster got finalized, Michael, and when I look at the way this roster is constructed and the way this team is constructed, A, I think, well, that looks like a Chris Beard team. And B, this team is going to defend the heck out of the ball.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, you never want to lose the sorts of guys they lost last year in terms of veteran presences, but just from a talent and composition standpoint, this seems like a pretty darn good roster. We spoke with James Scott and Travis Perry during that Chris Beard interview, and I thought it was really interesting because you know, they both chose Ole Miss because they wanted to elevate their games in some capacity. And for Travis Perry, he wants to become more than just a shooter. He wants to be a better defender. He wants to do all of these things. James Scott, we know he's a big, tall kid, but there's things that he wants to improve on as well. So I think this is a talented roster. Again, you never know how all the pieces are going to fit, but you know, as successful as Ole Miss was last year, they did have their defensive lapses from time to time. It wasn't always as clean as you expect Chris Beard defensive presences to be. This one, like you said, seems a little bit more versatile and seems like it's probably more akin to what we saw with Chris Beard in his previous stops.
Yeah, and if you look at it, everybody loved Juju Murray if you're a fan of Ole Miss basketball and what he did for the school, but he was 5'10". The shortest player on this roster looks like is going to be 6'2". That's 4 inches. You saw in the North Carolina game that when North Carolina fell behind, they just started, hey, let's switch and switch and switch till Juju Murray or Sean Padula is on one of our bigs and throw it down into it and see if we can score. That's how the comeback happened.
Yeah, no, and again, it's. I know they talked about positionless basketball a little bit last year in terms of having guys that you don't have to take off the floor, that guys don't feel like liabilities. This feels like a team that is going to be okay with those sorts of switches if they have to happen.
So, several players have my attention leading into this and leading into basketball season. The two kids from France, obviously, Camerdine and Giffa, are two players that you are paying attention to as the season gets there, because one's a penetrator and the other is a former MVP of Eurobasket. And there's another player that has been brought in that has a very foreign feel to this roster. And that's not something that's necessarily happened over the last couple of years. You think that's because it's an easier track to the NBA for these foreign players to go through the American college system or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. It does seem like it's been happening a little bit more recently, maybe not with Ole Miss, but I mean, I think it benefits both parties in terms of, like, if you're a cusp NBA prospect right now, spend a year or two or whatever it is in the NCAA, and I think it can be sort of hard to, because European basketball is so different. Just in terms of the setting and the competition and the rules and all those sorts of things. I think to see them in I guess like a classic, closer to NBA setting is probably pretty advantageous.
It makes me think about it, because he's essentially being a professional basketball player. And I mean, Elias Camerdine. And whenever you do that and play college basketball, is this a situation to where if a kid goes to the G League trying to get to the NBA and kind of washes out, is it now available to them to attend a college or university? Because you kind of throw the amateurism model out the door. A professional sport is a professional sport is a professional sport. Are we at the point to where a kid can go try at 18 to play professional basketball? If they don't work, they can go to a college?
Yeah, the G League thing is really interesting. That has really morphed the last few years with the I mean, I guess traditional G League was sort of like the minor league teams, but now you've got teams that are basically comprised of guys who want to make their money now and maybe didn't want to go the college route, want to spend, make money a little bit faster, or they feel like they're ready for professional basketball. I'm actually not sure on what the rule is of in terms of if you play in the G League and you flame out, if you can go to college. I actually don't know, but that seems like something that someone is going to try to find a loophole for. That's for sure. Because let's be honest, guys flame out. It doesn't work. They aren't ready for professional basketball. There are some seasoned guys in the G League, guys who've played in the NBA, some veterans who are trying to find their way back. So, I wouldn't be surprised if this is if this is this kind of change that we start to see, because it kind of feels like everything's changing with this professionalism and amateurism line being blurred pretty much every day, a little bit more every day as we know it.
Yeah, somebody that's in the minor league system in baseball. I think baseball might be the first one that actually does it. Somebody doesn't make it past 8 ball and wants to keep going, and a college is willing to take a chance on them and develop. I think with what's happening, this is the unintended consequence. This is just another professional league and another option for the players.
Yeah, I mean, again, it seems like every new ruling that we get these days, makes it seem like everything is a little bit closer to professionalism. And I know people have problems with that. It's got its pros and its cons for sure. But I mean, it's hard not to look at it as another sort of developmental league at this point.
Yeah, it's the point on my show. I said The House ruling actually doesn't remove any of the chaos. It will be exactly as it has been. The only thing it did was remove the amateurism era of college sports. The NCAA's 119 years of amateur athletics, that's over now. And that's the only thing the House settlement did.
It's crazy though. I mean, that was what they they hung their hat on for, like you said, like 120 years. That was the whole thing, the home of amateur athletics, and it's about more than the money and the pros and all these sorts of things. And within a couple of years, the message, I know they always try to keep the message on track a little bit, that, you know, we're still the NCAA, but it's hard not to see it's hard not to say that it has the message has changed pretty drastically here.
Yeah, the phrase student athlete cannot be heard without snickering at this point.
Yep. It's athlete student.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway, when we come back, we will talk to Michael all about what he has planned over the next couple of months, because we are firmly into talking season with a month until SEC Media Day. So stick around. All right, we're here with Michael Katz. We are firmly into talking season. It's going to be hard to come up with ideas for what we are going to cover each and every single day. Michael has a little bit of the same problem I have. I have to do a show every weekday, whether I want to or not, and I like to have content on every single day of the week. I'm sure Michael's the same way. And because of that, it can get a little bit weird content-wise. So what is going on at the Daily Journal right now? What do you have planned for the next month?
Well, so I'm trying to reach out to some of the recent NFL draft picks and their teams, and just trying to catch up with them a little bit. I actually spoke with Jordan Watkins yesterday. He's always been one of my favorites to chat with. We had a really nice talk yesterday. He's obviously with the 49ers now, and he honestly gave me some really cool insight that I wasn't aware of on some of the things that he went through while he was there. Or while he was here, just in terms of how bad the injuries were and just kind of where he was at mentally. So really cool stuff there. I think the other big one that is going to be a story over the next weeks, months, years is obviously that House settlement. And I'm talking with Keith Carter tomorrow to sort of kind of have him break it down for me in as simple terms as he can of what this really means and what it means for Ole Miss, how it changes things of that nature. So those are the two constants I would say right now. And I'm going to kind of be fleshing out before I head on vacation and media days start off. But you know, with that, it's baseball portal season too, and that's kind of starting to heat up a little bit. Obviously, we got the College World Series starting, I believe, tomorrow. So yeah, I think it will really get going after that. But I've already seen some Ole Miss players enter. Obviously, they're getting some as well. And I'm hoping to sort of do a state of the baseball program kind of thing in the next few weeks. And then obviously, you know, basketball, since they're practicing and they're available and they want to talk to us, hopefully learning more about some of these new guys there. And, you know, football always kind of takes care of itself in terms of the content. But hopefully trying to do some stuff with them too. I got 2 weeks, I think, before vacation starts. So we're just trying to get in as much stuff as I can.
Yeah, I hear you. I had an interview earlier in the week with Shihan Jerry Raja from CBS Sports, and we talked about the disconnect that the national pundits have compared to the computer models when it comes to Ole Miss. That was one of the discussion points. And the thing that we came back to, Ole Miss is kind of getting punished a little bit for not making the playoffs last year in the national pundits' mind. What is your thoughts on that?
It is interesting. You know, every preview thing that I've done, it's always like I'm always coming from it as like, Ole Miss is fine. Like, you don't have to worry about them. The program's in a fine place. But then the question is always like, well, they blew it last year, so don't you hold that against them? And it's like, well, you know, I think each season's its own thing. I don't think it's really fair to hold this group to what happened last year. That last year's team was also still really, really good, even if it didn't make the playoffs. So, but at the same time, I think that in national media and I guess some local too, we just all kind of get enamored with certain players and certain teams. And Ole Miss was one of those teams that I think people were kind of enamored with last year, and it didn't work. And I think some people got burned. And so when that happens, I think they're a little hesitant to go back to them as maybe making one of those teams that makes noise. Listen, the LSU's, Texas, like those Georgia, those are always teams that people are going to put their money on because it's smart money in the year of our Lord 2025, just in terms of who's going to be good or who's going to be in the playoff hunt. But I think Ole Miss burned some people last year. So I do think it is being held against them a little bit. It does seem like every time I'm asked about it, they are coming from way more the sky's falling sort of place than I am, because look, this program is stable. It's in a really good place. If the worst that you're talking about is 8-4, I think you're pretty happy with things.
Yeah, that was the first year under Jackson Dart. People forget that. There was an 8-4 season his first year. With Austin Simmons taking over, there is a chance, there's a legitimate chance, because of the talent that's on this team, of a Tennessee level run to the playoffs this year. Last year was probably a better team when you look at the talent on there. But there's plenty of talent on this team, and if they get some breaks, they make some plays, they could find themselves in the playoff, and everybody's saying, where did this team come from?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to be flying under the radar a little bit. In 2023, they were kind of a little bit under the radar the year that they went 11-2. I think people always, even to the end, kind of questioned that team. That team was really, really good, and again, set the program record for wins, all those sorts of things. Last year, they had all these expectations. That team was better than the 2023 team, but some things didn't go their way. It seemed like in 2023, all of the breaks kind of went their way, and luck is a big part of this thing. They won all the close games. Last year, they lost the close games. It seems like if things sort of revert back to at least the median, Ole Miss is going to be in a pretty good spot. If, again, the schedule's favorable. I know the talent is different than it was last year, but it's still extremely talented. You've been recruiting high school really well, and you've brought in another couple great portal classes. And, first and foremost, you've got a quarterback that you have been, developing over the last couple of years for a moment like this. I think it says something when, I know they brought in some transfer quarterbacks recently, but I don't think anyone is worried that anyone is testing Austin Simmons for the starting job. This is Austin Simmons' team. This is his job. They believe in him. And I think when you've got a quarterback that we think he can be, and the talent, listen, Tennessee caught people off guard last year with a first-year starting quarterback. Ole Miss is going to have a lot of talent, and if a couple breaks go their way, why not?
Yeah, one of the running backs need to show up. I did a story earlier in the week about the running back room, and I think the room this year is much more thoughtfully put together than it was after the Quinshawn thing, because I think they panicked a little bit thinking that one of those backs would have turned out. I think that this year is more thoughtfully put together, and we all know a running back helps every young quarterback.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of, Jackson's first year here, how Quinshawn set every record, and he was that running game was really what made that team go. I think they averaged like 202 yards a game. I think they were third in the country in rushing. Lane Kiffin's best teams have run the ball really well. That's always been the thing. Last year was his worst rushing team here by a decent enough amount in terms of yardage and whatnot and ranking. I think in a perfect world, not only to protect the quarterback, you can throw Jackson Dart into the fire and have him lead a passing game when the running game is not there. Maybe you don't feel that great as good about it with a younger quarterback, but like you said, a quarterback's best friend is a running game, and I do like the pieces that they've put together. It seems like each guy kind of brings something a little bit different, and when you put those pieces together, I think barring injuries or whatever it may be, they've got that's a pretty good room that should be a step up production wise from last year.
And one thing that's interesting to me, I have one more question, I'll let you out of here. But Suntarine Perkins, the returning leader in the SEC in sacks, the returning leader in tackles for loss, he is somebody that is not on any first-team SEC list. He is down like fourth team Phil Steele All-American, to where, hey, he's a good player, but he's not the best player in his conference. Why is that? This is a guy that can be absolutely dominant on the defensive side of the ball, but people are like, okay, we're just going to push him off to the side.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of is it a flash in the pan, or is this the guy that he really is? I think that's kind of unfair because he was a true freshman his first year, and then his first year as a full-time guy, he has 10.5 sacks. Like, clearly the talent production is going to be there. But at the same time, I think the question is, how good can he be when he doesn't have maybe as much established help around him? When you've got Princely on the other side, when you've got Jared Ivey and Walter Nolan, all these guys who can take a little bit of the pressure off and let him do different things. That being said, I think we are going to learn more about Suntarine Perkins this year than we did last year, because he's going to be asked to do more, I think, just in terms of, like, he is the best player on this defense. He is there. The ball is going to be in his court in terms of them building it around him, at least from what it seems like. So we're going to learn a lot about him. I do think it's interesting that a guy who is the leading and returning sack guy in the SEC by a decent amount is not on a ton of those preseason lists. But listen, I think that if he does what Pete Golding wants him to do and what they think he can do, he's going to be on a lot of those postseason lists.
Yeah, and Sheehan Wednesday, when we were talking with him, he mentions, like, this is a guy that it reminds me a lot with what Pete Golding did with Will Anderson. If Suntarine Perkins is anything close to Will Anderson,
feel pretty good.
Yeah, we're going to be pretty happy at the end of the year. Stick around after this. When the show's over, I do want to ask you a question, but I do want to take you off for just a second. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss sports. Your support means the world to us. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most important fan of the rapid changes around college football. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Toddy. Remember, analytics is just the old English word meaning bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.